for this warm welcome and introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our session tonight. So the topic today I'm going to walk you guys through is how to navigate a new project as a business analyst. This is based on my recent experience navigating some new project that I was being allocated to. So I've got some learnings and some tips to share with you guys. So just to start with a bit of introduction of myself, if you haven't known me or listened to my talks before. So basically, I kind of transitioned into business analyst roles in 2021, and my past career is mostly around technical sales engineers in the electronics industry or semiconductor industry, and I've also done some other stuff like product manager, account manager, and marketing director at a startup company. So a bit of diverse background and working experience before joining the BA force. Currently, I'm a senior business analyst working at Westpac New Zealand. However, I actually live in Queenstown and work remotely, but I do travel to Wellington and Auckland from time to time just to catch up with my colleagues and add some FaceTime. And I'm also the founder of the BA Career Meetup. This is purely because I have been through this transitioning journey and I know how difficult it is and how important to build the network and learn from each other and get the support from your peers. That's why I started this community group, and very great to see you guys here joining us tonight. A bit of interesting facts about me. Outside of the work, I'm pretty much adventure type of person. So I enjoy a lot of outdoor sports, such as trail running, hiking, skiing. I just finished the 62K Greenstone and Caples track during the Anzac long weekend. So if anyone ever traveled to the South Island to do some long trampings, please let me know. I might be able to join you guys. Cool. So before I enter tonight's main section, I would love to share a little bit of story of me. Just happened recently. I think that initiated my motivation to give this talk to you guys tonight. So I finished my previous project around September 2024, last year, and I was assigned to a new project under the digital group. After working in the team for about only 5 or 6 weeks, a restructuring plan was announced, and we were moved out of digital to another newly formed service group. And I was very lucky to be one of the few ones that stay with the original team, rather than being pulling apart and assigned to the new team. So I heard it from my people lead later on when the senior leaders were discussing the new structure. My ex-service owner felt for me to stay over with the team. And he said, Sophie is an invaluable team member for us, and we must keep her. So what is the gist of this story? Navigating a new project well does not only enable a fast delivery of value to customers or end users, but also adding weight to your own credibility and job security. So this is my motivation to do this talk today. I would love to help you guys navigate the projects better as a BA. So I've got a statement here. The project may not be new, but you are new to the project. So what are some of the phases you might join the project as a BA? I will explain more in the next slides. But what is the implication of this statement? So if you are joining a project as a BA when the project is not brandly new, which means there might be some project histories you need to know, which could impact your work. And secondly, the type of work you need to do varies against the project phase you just entered. And thirdly, you may work in a team where people already have a relationship with each other and they already have a set of ways to collaborate. This is called a ways of working in our workplace. So there are a lot of things you need to navigate through when they already exist for a while. So let's have a look of the typical project phases. It also depending on the project approach that an organization adopts, but typically there will be 4 major phases of the project. First is initiation. Basically, it's prior to the business case or the project is formally approved and get the budget allocated to that project. And discovery phase is mostly around understanding specific scope, understanding the specific requirements, and what do we need to deliver. And also we may need to touch on about the solution designing with your developers or engineers. And for the delivery phase, once you already have a design kind of approved, then your engineers will implement the codings. So at this stage, as a BA, you might need to do some supporting work, help to clarify some requirements, help to add some details to the stories. And you may need to manage the requirements changes because there's always changes. You need to trace those requirements changes and document them properly. And last but not least, you need to do some UAT tests to make sure the solution meets the customer requirements and deliver what the business needs. Lastly is the embed period, which means when the project is delivered, you will need to evaluate the outcome of the project, whether it meets the business expectations or not, whether it delivers the values or not. And you may need to draft some documentation and hand it over to the BAU for a routine running. So amongst all those 4 project phases, based on my experience and observations, I think most likely a BA will join a project at this discovery phase when the project is formally established and the team has mostly kind of formed up with the right resources, right type of people in the team. So this is the phase you normally will join the project as a BA. And also sometimes you might be involved in a very early stage of the project. So this happened to me once when I just started my BA work at NZX. I was involved in an initial project. I helped some product managers to form up a business case, did some feasibility analysis and cost benefit analysis. But I do believe this is relatively few people will join the project at this stage. And less likely will be the delivery and embed phase. However, as the story Ella was just mentioned, I was actually joining the team when they have almost complete the solution. They have done all the migration, but they just need to complete some end-to-end testing. That's when I enter the project. The reason is purely because the previous contractor BA has finished her contract, and then they need a permanent BA to join the team. So this is how things happened in a very short time. Yeah. So moving to the next, I think most people will actually experience very similar mental stages. So the first stage you might feel is overwhelmed. So when you started with a project, you don't know what you don't know. You might enter a completely brand new space. You have absolutely no idea. Just like me, when I started with Westpac, I was assigned to a team called Software Factory, which is the department, and they are mainly dealing with some platform toolings. At that time point, I have absolutely no idea what is platform tooling, what does it involve, what are the tools, and the names of those tools are very funny as well. They're called Chef. What the hell is Chef, right? So it's absolutely unknown space for me. But that's okay. After a short period, maybe it will take you like a couple of weeks. Then you feel like, oh, okay, I know what I don't know. And then you might slowly gaining the knowledge and building the network internally and understand how you can get those questions from and how you can get turn those unknowns to knowns, which is the third stage where you feel much more comfortable with where you are, you have the information to do your job properly, and you can help the team deliver some awesome piece of work. However, this is not the happy ending, right? There's no happy ending for those stories. So at any point, you might just going back to the previous 2 stages. You discovered something that you still not sure what it is about, or you completely entered into a new space again when you maybe suddenly switched to a new project, to another project. Just like me, I was going through a restructuring of the team, and our team's focus has been completely changed. I was thrown by our leaders a completely new project, and I have absolutely no idea. Again, I entered this like mental stage that I have no idea what I don't know, right? So at any time you could go in through this period time and time again. But that's okay. Everyone will be going through that stage. So you are not alone if you feel confused, frustrated, or a bit of lost. So that's all right. And be nice to yourself. Give yourself some time to go through those stages. But tonight, I'm going to share some tips on how you can go through this process faster and how you can deliver values faster to your team so that you will have higher credibility within your organization. So my framework will be split into 5 aspects. And typically, these aspects are grouped under different type of questions. These are 4W and 1H question. So I will go through each of the aspects and highlight some of the quick questions you can ask. What are the challenges you might face, and what are the tips you can tackle those challenges? Cool. And first question is the most favorite question that BA would love to ask, is the why. Before we're doing any detailed work, we always need to understand the big picture. And that's how we can deliver our job well as the BA. So the first question we need to answer or get answer for is, why are we doing this project? Why are we spending money and time and having so many people working on this thing? What is the problem we are solving? And are we solving the right problem? Are we solving the problem in the right ways? These are very valid questions, but sometimes people just too obsessed with the details and the work they need to deliver and forget to ask about those fundamental questions, which can completely kind of make your work upside down because people may not going through a proper or robust justification of the work or the project that needs to be delivered. Just give a quick, simple example. So when your team is tasked to create a new feature for a mobile app because the business is losing customers. So the question you will need to ask yourself is that, how do we know that we are losing customers because of this app doesn't have that feature? What is the root cause of the customer retention issue, right? It may not be related to this mobile app feature. It might be our customer service, might be the process that takes too long for us to get something delivered, those kind of things. So it might be some low cost and more effective way to retain customers or even attract new customers. So asking those tough questions at a very early stage are the best chance you can save investment waste for your business and set a very clear picture for your project. So these are the common issues that kind of in corresponding to the key questions. If we take assumptions as facts or taking symptoms as the root cause, we may end up with solving the wrong problem or use the wrong way to solve that problem. So my tip is very simple. Just keep asking hard questions. It doesn't matter, maybe your leaders will feel embarrassed or feel like they don't have an answer for you, but that's okay. You have to ask those questions. It is the obligation of you to do the job properly. And another thing is that if the business has decided to do the work, where is the evidence? What are the previous analysis the business has done to prove that this is something we should go? Right? Ask for those evidence or look for it yourself. If you can find those recordings or the evidence documented somewhere, which means there's probably a good reason in there. But if there's not, it's a big question mark you need to resolve. So this is the first aspect, why. The second aspect is what. And this is the natural question you might ask. What needs to be done by us? Right? By us is quite important. By you, but not other teams, by us. The second one is what has been done. Because when you enter a project, it's probably already started for a while. So what has been delivered? What has been done? Or what is existing for you to reuse rather than reinvent the wheel? And last is what still needs to be done. So it feels like we're doing a future state, current state and gap analysis, which is the typical BA framework or a tool to use. And also, what is the definition of them? So there are some common issues if you skip the scoping exercise and not answering those questions. You may end up wasting time on things that is not important at all or not in scope for your team. You're doing other people's work. It is not nice to step on other people's toes or working on something that's not delivered as considered as valuable at all. It is purely waste of time and energy. You may also encounter the problem of scope creeping, which means the scope has secretly extending and adding a little bit more work here and there. Then the original scope was not the same at all. And also, there might be constantly scope changing. And this happened to our project recently. We have been asking around for the scope of a project, but it's keep changing pretty much every single sprint, which is every 2 weeks. So the answer we got was very volatile. And it is very hard to navigate through those uncertainties because once you have working through the solution or discoveries, if the scope change again, the previous work would need to be redone. So it's very frustrating if you have those scope changing all the time. And the third one is what I've mentioned earlier, reinvent the view. So if there's something already existing and you're repeating the work, you are reinvent the wheel, and this is not ideal. Last, but maybe sometimes neglected by a lot of people, is that you just accept the scope as it is and never negotiate. Because one, you might not be comfortable to negotiate the scope. You think, oh, what is allocated, is confirmed. This can't be changed. But this is not actually the case. There's always room to negotiate scope, especially when the delivery is at risk. So if a delivery is at risk, you may need to want to go back to the scope and see, okay, now we have limit of time or resources. What things we can drop? What scope we can how we can descope the work. So maybe we can deliver it at a later point or another phase. So this is something you can keep in mind that don't always accept the scope as it is. So consider about it. So how to tackle those common issues? I've got first thing, which seems quite simple, but actually not many people do that. It is just to grab your key stakeholders. This could be your delivery lead, it could be your project manager, even a higher level person who can confirm the scope with your team. Just grab them in the workshop and open up an empty Confluence page or whatever, or have a business requirements page open up at your screen sharing and go through with them one by one and confirm the scope at the meeting and get them validated or approved right away. And then afterwards, you need to document that scope, a statement of the scope on a proper document, Confluence page or whatever, Jira tickets, just write it down and distribute it with your key stakeholders and team members so that everyone is on the same page. Because if the scope is not written down, we have no baseline to work with. We don't know whether the scope has been changed or it has been agreed or it has been ever discussed at all. So this is something we absolutely need to nail as the first step towards navigating the project, which is clearly define the boundary of the work. You need to do what. So there are some other small tips I would love to go through. First one is to build a glossary. Sometimes people neglect about the terminology they use. They might call one thing very differently, and people may not understand each other, even they are talking about the same thing. At that time, one thing you can do is to build a simple glossary to state what is the terminology is called in different systems or different contexts. So for example, when I'm investigating a payment migration issue, I find one thing is called pre-registered payee in system A, but there are 3 different names in system B called pre-registered biller, ad hoc biller, and saved biller, depending on whether the payee has been saved by the customer or not. So this could be very, very confusing because very simple workflow to show what is involved in those the scope. So use more visuals for your communication. Secondly is understand what is already exist and you reuse them. I think one simple thing you can do is just to dig out what other existing documentations available. So you can simply open up the SharePoint if you have one in your company. It just enter the keywords of your project. For example, it called pre-registered payee, like confirmation of payee, which is the feature, and you can search what you can find out from your internet. It could be some Confluence pages or some papers, slides, packs, those kind of things. Just gather as much as you can because not necessarily people will remember to share these links with you. So you need to do some proactive digging in your company. Understand what already exists and reuse them. which can save you loads of work if you practice this well. Last but not least is the negotiation scope when necessary, which I've already mentioned before. Always remember there's room for negotiation. If you don't do it, you will lose the opportunity. Okay, we entered the when space. When space is always important because we need to know when the work needs to be done. So when the project must be delivered is the key question we need to ask under this when space. And the common issues are similar to the previous one, which you just take the deadline as it is, at its face values. Let people tell you there is a date to cut off to deliver your project, then you just take it as it is. Another thing is that you may have been assigned to a very unrealistic or stretching timelines because there are so many unknowns that you can't really figure out at the beginning of the project, which may seriously delay the project delivery. And it could be capacity issues because they haven't got enough developers or project managers or other key functional people in the team, that we don't have the right people to do the right things. We have a bottleneck of the capacity, which could happen. And it's also a key thing I think has been mentioned by someone in the chat earlier answering the opening question, which is the dependency. Dependency is quite common happening, like you can find in a big corporate, because each team have their own territory to kind of manage. But sometimes your work is dependent on other team members to enable you to deliver your project. However, if that dependency has not been identified and communicated at early stage, there is a risk that it is not prioritized or not unaware at all to the other team that you are dependent on. So this could be very serious consequence because of that. All right. So talking about all the challenges sounds very scary, but we do have several approaches to kind of tackle or mitigate those issues. Firstly and foremost is to understand the real reasoning of that timeline that people give to you. So for my current project, we were told to deliver the solution by the end of Q3 this year. But later, we keep asking questions, why? And later we found that the true deadline of the program we are supporting is end of Q4, because we are the backend, we manage the backend system, and the initiative we are supporting have a deadline of Q4. The 3 months gap in between is actually to leave enough time for the front-end team to modify the UI stuff and operation team to do the change management with customers to kind of communicate what will be changed and onboard them to the new platform. So when we dig deeper, we discover that Q4 is only just one of their milestones timelines for that big project. And that milestone has dependencies on many other features, not just us. Which means even if we deliver our feature or solution, there's still a risk that other features are not delivered. Hence, the timeline might be impacted for that project, for that big program. So the deeper you dig, the more information you will get, and you will understand the big picture behind it. So you also will have a better understanding of the potential room you can leverage for your future timeline negotiations, all the ways you can actually speed up the delivery because you can identify those dependencies. So this is the reason why we need to really understand the reasoning of those timelines, not taking it as a face value. Another thing I've covered this is to uncover any managed dependencies and deliver risk early. Because if you only discover those dependencies like a couple of weeks before the deadline, you will be in big trouble because there's no enough time for you to solve those issues. But if you can deliver or identify them like a couple of months ahead, there's a much bigger chance you can resolve it before you have a headache or a delivery risk. So what you can do is to work backwards to map out the key milestones that your team needs to deliver or hit on, so that you might identify, okay, if I need to hit this milestone, what needs to be true? What are the prerequisites? Just to break the work down in much smaller pieces so that it is easier for you to evaluate what might be the dependencies and risks to deliver those milestones so you can achieve the ultimate goal in a couple of quarters sometimes. And then there's a very practical tool in Jira. I'm not sure if everyone is using Jira at the moment. there's a feature called project plans. So if you have that access, you can basically build a roadmap in Jira and map out all the dependencies, all the scores involved for that initiative, because you might not be the only one who delivered the work. And you can share it with your stakeholders. So by visualizing everything on the map, like the roadmap, it is much easier to see, okay, where are the bottlenecks? How can we shuffle things around? What things is at risk of exceeding the timelines? So this is a very, very powerful tool that we are using. We had a big workshop, engaged about 20-ish stakeholders in that workshop. And at the end of the workshop, we have managed to create a collective roadmap in Jira. So our delivery leaders or program managers are able to kind of have further discussion on that. So Priscilla said, please repeat what is it in Jira. It is called project plan. So if you can search it and have a look at if your company got that kind of functionality in Jira, that would be great. Or you can search on the YouTube channel to see what does it look like and ask around if you can add it on to your Jira product within the company. Right, I'm aware of the time. I'll speed up a little bit, but I think we're entering the most important part as well, which is the who questions. And I have already seen a lot of comments to our opening questions around the stakeholders. This is definitely true. And my answer to that question will be the same. It's like people, I think, is one of the most complicated things to navigate in a project, because we can't deliver a project without collaborating with others. So it is really important to figure out the key question here: who you should involve for what and when. So there are a couple of components in this question. It is not simply about who, but involve who for what and when are equally important. So there are some common issues, right? The first one is very common, or you may already experience yourself, which is not involve the right people in the discussion. And this could be two extremes. One is that you missed someone in the discussion who should be involved. And the second extreme is that you involve someone too much in a discussion. For example, you might invite all your team members, all your engineers to all those discovery meetings or workshops, which has overloaded them and take up the time where they could spend on codings or developing stuff. So if you enter either of these ends, it's not good. But I think over-involving people is probably less harmful than not involving someone, because this happened to us just recently. When we have completed our initial detailed design solution, and we presented to a few of the stakeholders that we identified that they might be interested in the solution. However, when they have heard of our detailed design, they were so surprised. They said, okay, we didn't know this is the approach that you guys are taking. We don't think this has been approved officially. So this actually prompt us to revisit architectural design and decisions. And that took another a month and a half. And we're still not reaching to a decision yet. So you can see not involving some stakeholders at the beginning could be catastrophic. Right? You may have to end up with redoing all the work or reshuffle all the solutions. It's just a really terrible thing if you didn't involve the right stakeholders in the room at the initial discussions. So this is a very common trap or issue that you may encounter. And another common issue for a lot of people is that you really have to compete for your subject matter experts' capacity, because normally these super rich, experienced people, they will be in very small number, but they are in high demand. Every single project or every single team needs them. So their capacity is stretched very, very thin. And sometimes you can't even get a meeting booked in a week's time or something like that. So this is a reality that we all have to face. And the last is probably less serious issue is that stakeholders who are impacted by your change or project are not well informed or aligned with the decision. So they may not be happy about the change, or they don't know about what is going to impact them. So they're underprepared for what's going on, and this is a very bad stakeholders management practice. That you do need to keep a group of people informed, even though they may not be the key decision makers who could have a huge impact or influence on your project. But at least you need to be keep informed. Okay. What are the tips? First thing is very simple, just to build your stakeholders list. But this doesn't need to be like, it doesn't need to work like a change manager or something. You don't need to map everyone's power or interest level for every single stakeholder. But you could build your own stakeholders map, just indicating what's their title, what is their expertise, what can you get help from them for, those kind of things, just for your own purpose, let you know who you have talked to, and who you can ask for help in the future. Like, because you talk to so many people all the time, constantly, you can easily lose track of who is managing what. Right, so build up a stakeholder list is quite crucial for your own purpose, and it also can be shared as a legacy of yourself. If any new of team members is joining the group, the project, you can share the list with them. So let's say doesn't need to start from scratch, just like you. So can you find those stakeholders in the first place? I think this is most important. One simple thing is that asking around, asking recommendations. You can start with people in your team. Ask your service owner, project manager, engineers, whoever already work in the company for a while. They must know quite a few people who might be able to give you some answers to the questions. And another thing is that don't neglect it. Sometimes there are big corporate meetings like a delivery group meeting or a BA chapter meeting that they will invite someone to talk about stuff, or there could be a quarterly planning meeting. So there is a public like slide deck that you can have a look. They might include some names for who owns that project or who had expertise in that area that you can secretly document them down in your like stakeholders list, just to build it gradually from little by little. And eventually you will find you already accumulate a lot of knowledge about who the stakeholders are and what you need to engage them for. And the second thing, for a lot of new BAs or junior BAs, sometimes they will kind of underestimate the power of building the relationships or do some internal networking. But always remember that prioritize the relationship building kind of higher than delivering the work. So you always need to build some rapport first before you collaborate or make ask for from your stakeholders. It is actually very simple. So when I started with no matter what company or no matter what project, the first thing I do is to have coffees with people, like talk to them, get to know them as a human being, like understand what they are interested, like what they have been their career histories, what they have done before, like anything they have done before interesting, right? Or even like how many dogs do they have, how many children do they have, what they have done in the weekends, just a little bit of small talks with them so that you can build like a rapport with them, and then you can eventually invest in those kind of emotional capital bank, or social, we call it social capitals, that you can invest your time in. And believe me, this will give you a compound interest if you do this in a long term. So easily, if you can have those relationships and trust in place with people, with your stakeholders, the work you can do will be much easier. So remember, we talked about some of the SMEs capacity is very limited. So if you have like a quick request, you want to ask them for a question, if you don't have the relationship in place, they can easily turn you down and ask, oh, can you give me a JIRA ticket? Create me a JIRA ticket and follow the process, right? However, if you know them, have some personal relationships, they could easily spend 5-10 minutes to extract some data or check in the system and tell you what is going on there and answer your question. So you can see it could be a dramatic difference if you have or have not the relationship with the people that you're working with. And whenever you ask things from these people, these very busy SMEs, ensure that you tell them the context, the reasons, and provide just enough details, not overwhelm them, just provide enough details for them to help you get the answers. So this will help you work much easier as well. And thirdly is for the stakeholders who are not well informed, there's a very simple way you can mitigate this issue is by keep your work very transparent, that everybody can access and read about what has been done, like what has been discussed, what has been decided. So really build up your documentation and put them on the public place. It could be either a SharePoint site or a conference page or whatever is easy to find out or easy to navigate. So keep your work transparent, and this can greatly enhance your credibility because everyone can see the progress, everyone can see how much effort you have invested, and you have reduced the chance that somebody else take over your credibility and claim the work is done by them. So this could happen to you if you don't really demonstrate what you have done. Last, I think it is the how, but I think how question is probably the least important amongst the 5 aspects because we're talking about navigating the project in the discovery phase, but how is normally entering the solutioning phase or even the delivery phase. So some of the key questions you can ask is how the work can be done, which is mainly around what is the solution, what is the approach we need to take. And however, the most questions around the how space, I think, is how decisions are made, which you will need to understand it very clearly, because if you're not, it will cause troubles. Things you did may not be a widely adopted decision, and you could end up rework again or abandon the complete solution. And towards the end of the kind of project, you need to understand how do we know if we are on track, which means we need to understand what are the key metrics we need to measure our progress or even the values that we delivered. So tips, again, still documenting all the design questions and discovery so that you are not losing the track of issues that you need to follow up with. And again, trace requirements and changes and document them. If you have a proper change management process, that will be great. But if not, simply document them down will help you a lot at the later point if you need to revisit those changes. And I understand the decision-making governance process is super critical. You need to know who to engage through what type of forum and what is the cadence of those kind of forums. So, for example, we have a DTRB, which is a technical governance board to review all the detailed design solutions, and they have this. Every Wednesday, they will have a session in the afternoon. However, if you want to get into that session, you need to have your design ready by the Friday, the week before, and you need to lodge a Jira ticket to be able to add it to the agenda. So there are some prerequisites or the pre-work you need to complete, and you need to understand when and do what. So really understand the governance process thoroughly will help your project progress smoothly a lot. Right. So I've talked a lot. I feel like I've dumped a lot of ideas to you guys. Hopefully you don't feel overloaded. But there's a simple question I think can guide where you can focus yourself on the navigation journey, which is what drives the project delivery to create business value that I can contribute to. So there are 2 key things in the statement. One is driving the project delivery. So it could be a piece of analysis. It could be a decision that we need to make next. It could be some discoveries or resolving some design issues or going through that governance process to get decisions made. But that's not enough. We need to deliver business values. If we only deliver the project, it may not meet the business requirements. So we're still not really reaching or meeting the business expectations. So if you can direct your energies or focus based on those 2 criteria and see what you can contribute the most, I think you will make the most of the period and actually accelerate through the navigation period really quickly and adding value to your team and the business. Right. Last but not least, I would love to share a project navigation toolset that is developed by Red Vespa. So again, they also split the project phases into discover, define, develop, and deliver phase. And you can scan the QR code. I'm sure Mia can help to send a link to this document while you can download. I think this is very comprehensive, and some of the ideas might be pretty similar to what I've introduced tonight, but it's definitely worth a reading It covers a wider perspective rather than just a BA. So if you're interested, feel free to download from the Red Westpac website. That's me. 12 minutes for questions.
Great.
Pass over
Thank
to you.
you, Sophie, for the informative presentation on project management. And we'll have the Q&A session begins right now. We'll start with the questions on Slido. And for some of the questions in chat will be discovered. Oh, someone raised their hand. Okay. So the first question is how to ask a difficult question while maintaining a positive relationship with the customer for future interactions.
Yeah, that's a great question. Even though I don't deal with the real end customer because we're supporting internal business initiatives, but when I ask a difficult question to my stakeholders, firstly is again, you need to have build some initial rapport with them, so you are able to stretch their relationship with these people, right? So first thing is build rapport before you need them, and secondly, just to frame your question in a less confrontational way. So instead of asking why question, you can always ask, can you share what is the reasons or what is your considerations behind this decision? Right? You can reframe this in a different way and sounds less kind of hostile. And third thing is that you really need to explain why you need to ask the question to them. What is the benefit like for your stakeholders if they can share some more insights and they can share some like things that you may not be aware of. I think these are the three things that I would love to suggest.
Thank you, Sophie. And I hope this answered your question. The second one would be how can I transition to business analytics role?
Normally, most BAs are falling to this career by accident. They were either shoulder tapped by the other colleagues because they have done a great job as, for example, frontline staff. But if you want to make a deliberate transition into a BA, I think one thing you can do is definitely keep updates with our like future events because this is the chance you can communicate and build some networks with practitioners in the BA area. And also one thing, if you are completely new to the BA world, I'd suggest you read some like BA textbooks and maybe even try out the ECBA, which is the entry level of license and certifications of the BA. And that can help you to establish a systematic understanding of the business analysis practices and frameworks. So these are the things you might be able to try out as the first place.
Thank you. Definitely follow our BA Career LinkedIn page and for future events. I hope this answers your question. The third question is, what is the most business critical decision you've influenced, and how did you validate it was the right one from your experience to date?
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's not easy to answer, to be honest. But using my recent experience as what I quoted earlier, which is missing a stakeholder in a previous discussion. This is the example I raised. I think I've done quite a lot of things and be able to influence the business or architectural decisions because I have kind of extracted some data and did a lot of analysis to generate insights to understand actual customer behavior on how they manage their current payments through what platform or channel, which nobody has done that kind of analysis before. So I always love to kind of support or ground my recommendation or the approach suggested based on those facts or data, so that we have the proof to support what we want, kind of to what is the approach we want to adopt. So I think that's definitely one of the biggest kind of decisions I have been able to influence. So I just work directly with the head of the digital people. Then they just ask me about any additional insights they want to inform the business decisions, even though I was not part of that advisory or governance meeting, but my materials or my conclusions has been shared multiple times as far as I know. So it has been used to influence my stakeholders and decision making. So yeah, always try to extract data and use evidence to support your conclusions, I think is really important.
Thank you. It's BA's responsibility to decide who should be involved or the project manager?
Well, I'd say there are some clear lines or a dedicated kind of responsibility for BA and also for PM. For BA, you are more like a more detailed discovery or analysis, especially around eliciting requirements. But project manager is managing the budgeting, the resource allocating, and timelines and delivery risk, those kind of things. So I would love to say BA should be very familiar with the stakeholders who you can get some details from, like to resolve some of the design questions or answer some of the requirements, be able to clarify whether this is supported by the business or not at that level. And project managers is probably more like at a higher level, dealing with those decision makers and bring up some of the key options that they need to get approval from, for example, a project governance board. So I think even though these stakeholders group might overlap, but again, we are focusing on different types of stakeholders and we're managing different relationships. So if you're not sure about something, like who to involve, you can definitely discuss with your project manager. But again, not every project has a project manager, unfortunately. So for my current project, we don't have a PM or even a service owner for about 3 months. And these 3 months are the most intense months for the discovery work. But I have to lead all initiative discovery work along with my Scrum Master, who is acting service owner during that period. So yeah, don't really fully rely on anyone else, but really be proactive yourself and navigate as much as you can.
Great, thank you. So someone said he or she is new to the New Zealand market with a valid work visa and prior experience overseas. What would be the best way to break into a business analytics role here at New Zealand?
Yeah, I would still love to say I really build your network locally and try to connect with different types of people, such as the recruiters in the BA space, hiring for the BA roles, hiring managers, if you can meet them in some of the meetup events, or anyone that have been working in the BA space that you can talk to. But be aware of that you don't want to just ask for referrals from them directly at the first time you meet them or chat with them. But just be open and be really curious about what is happening in the local market. What are the roles available? What are the different tasks that BAs are working every day? Just try to gather as much as information you can before you actually craft your strategy of finding the first role. I think there are a lot of details we can discuss to this question, but I really suggest you to watch some of our previous online events that has been recorded on our YouTube channel, talking about what are the New Zealand BA markets, CV, CL writing tips and interview tips, and how to manage or develop your professional network or how to adapt to New Zealand market. So these are all very useful information for you to tap into that already exists on our YouTube channel. Yep.
And when onboarding on a new project or organization, how do you start off asking more complex and challenging questions while it's still building on a positive report?
Yeah, I think this one is very similar to the first one I've answered, but I'd love to say don't be afraid to ask those questions. And actually, at the beginning of joining a new project is your best chance to ask those questions. So if you have been working on the project, like say after 3, 4 months, and you are still asking those questions, that might be annoying to some people, right? But if you ask, like play with a naive eyes at the beginning, I don't think anyone will just accuse you about that. So it's totally normal that you have lots of questions at the beginning, and being curious about things, how to do your job well, how to understand the situation properly. I think it's very crucial. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. But again, try to frame them in a more friendly way and consider what is the impact to the other person. What is the benefit there if you get those answers correct? Right. So always take into put other people's shoes before you ask things.
What are some common mistakes should a BA avoid when starting a new project? I think this is somehow answered in your presentation as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, this is definitely covered, but I'm happy to share a copy of my slides afterwards. So I
mhm.
think, Ellen, you can send a
Sounds
meetup
good.
message to everyone and
Yeah.
attach the slides pack just as a
Um,
reference.
how do you manage interaction with stakeholders who are resist to change or not constructively engaged? How to influence and make friends with them?
Well, I think even though I haven't really encountered too many resisting stakeholders, but we do have stakeholders which who are very opinionated and hold on to their ideas very tightly. Let they insist on having some sort of features or access to our channels, those kind of things. I think one thing we can do again is to understand properly about what are their concerns, right? So sometimes we are actually just dealing with emotions, like emotions that people have who are afraid of those changes might take over their jobs, who like they might have difficulties in utilizing those tools in their day-to-day job. They have to learn a lot of new things. They have to get rid of their old habits. So this is all scary. If you can think in these people's shoes and understand where does this emotion coming from, I think you have resolved half of the problem. And secondly, is really to help them navigate the changes that they might need to go through. And what are the steps? What are the changes to be rolling out? What is the things that they can do to prepare themselves? What are the kind of the skills or knowledge they need to pick up? Maybe just plan it out as a training sessions for them, or dropping sessions to answer any questions. Just keep things very open and not hiding anything from those stakeholders. Um, yeah, and again, building rapport with these people, really be empathetic, and like considering and looking at things from their lenses rather than yours. Don't try to push your ideas through to them. Like trying to really understand them before like you can provide some solutions. I think that's the key thing.
Thank
Maybe
you.
time for one last question. I'm aware the time is already 9 o'clock.
Yeah, I think the last question is somehow related to one question Adam is asking in the chat. What if you are
Oh yeah.
referred to the wrong person or the right person, but who gives the wrong information? Have any impacts caused by those wrong info? Who should be responsible for that?
So you mean let somebody tell you an answer, but that answer is wrong, and how to deal with that situation? That might be some consequence linked to that, taking that answer as the correct answer. Well, again, this is again something we have been through recently. We were told about something that we should do, but again, it proves that this is not the correct approach, or it's not fully aligned, or this is complete the wrong sequence to do the work. So I think the essence of that is don't take everything at its face value. Really need to validate why is that coming from? Like what is the evidence? What is the proof? What other previous analysis has been done, right? You need to ask for those evidence to validate that this is the right answer. You can't just take it as a face value. Again, you can cross-check with one thing with multiple people. You can't just rely on one single information source, and that could be very risky. If that person leave the company or they give you the wrong answer, you have no idea. So just cross-check with a few people, and if they are all saying the same thing, by large chance this is the correct answer. But if not, yeah, no, don't take it. Yeah, and also just to cover yourself, document those answers. So I always have that table, right? What is the question? Who raised that question? What is the answer? And who provided that answer? Who is the information source? Remember to document them. And if you need to revisit that by any chance or any reasons, you will have the record documented.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's my answer.
And I think that is all from today. Thank you all for joining us tonight at BA Career. I hope you all enjoyed Sophie's presentation and learned something valuable about project management as a business analytics. We are looking forward to see you all at future events at BA Career. Thank you again for this event, and I hope you have a very wonderful evening. Um, We have the QR code of Business Career Meetup Group and our YouTube channel on the screen. Please subscribe and follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Thank you all for tonight.
Yeah, and I noticed that there are some more questions that hasn't been answered. I'm happy to maybe prepare a document with my answers to those questions, and then you can share with the audience.
Yes, and we'll be posting those via LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Cheers.
Yeah.